Bernard Grech has pledged to crack the whip on those who harm the PN on social media. Franco De Bono has used the restaurant analogy to depict the PN's struggles. A baby has died days after being blessed by Pope Francis. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening and welcome to Lovin Daily. I'm Tim Diacono, and the fallout from the general election results continues. This time, opposition leader Bernard Grech was kept quite a relatively low profile since the results. Gave an interview on Net in which he warned PN activists that he won't tolerate anyone whose social media posts and comments cause harm to the party. And he said, he made it quite clear that he's ready to impose some kind of disciplinary measures. Grech said that throughout the one and a half years he's been in charge of the party, the uncertainty over the general election date prevented him from taking certain decisions and implementing certain changes. However, now that the election has been all said and done, the PN has a chance to establish clear and fixed timeframes, flex our muscles, in his words, and take decisions. And the party can take decisions and implement changes that perhaps he couldn't do earlier. He said he urged people to help the PN, get involved, argue internally if needs be, but not just criticize the PN on social media, because that will only harm the party. And he said there will be discipline where needs be. Now look, I mean, it's true that a party needs to be united if there's any chance of being credible. This is something that the Labour Party spoke about a lot throughout the campaign, and with good reason, because the moment people see a party that doesn't seem to agree with itself, then it's going to be quite unlikely for people to trust it with running the government. It's common sense. The PN has been hanging out its dirty laundry quite a lot in recent years, and surely that didn't help its chances during this campaign, even though it was, or at least appeared to be, more united in the months preceding the campaign. These things stick in people's minds, as we can see through certain post-mortems as well. However, this should also come voluntarily and not by force, I believe, or else there's the risk that the PN is going to start looking too authoritarian, and that might even harm the party in the other directions. What's Bernard Grech going to do, for example? Have a team of people scouring Facebook and suspend the membership of people who say he needs to resign? Is that kind of open discussion not allowed in the PN anymore? I think he needs to be very clear on what kind of discipline he's talking about and what kind of discipline he's thinking about, and not just express hard words. However, it's very clear that he does intend to stay on, and that he's staying despite the defeat, and that he's looking towards the future. On the same topic, former PN MP Franco De Bono gave quite an interesting analogy of the PN's current problems, comparing the party to a restaurant that had long been losing clients ultimately due to the arrogance of its chef and its manager, and responded by replacing 2 of its waiters instead. Then that didn't work. It decided to replace more waiters. That didn't work. Eventually, the owner of the restaurant quit. The restaurant changed hands again and again, but the chef and the manager remained, and the restaurant kept losing clients. The comparisons to the PN are quite obvious. He's referring to people who think, Franco De Bono is referring to people who think within the PN, who think that they have some kind of right, perennial right over the party, and that it belongs to them, and that changing a few faces here and getting some fresh MPs, even changing the leader might not solve the problem, but changing what he calls, removing what he calls the spider within the cobweb will. He didn't mention any names as to who these people are that are causing so much problems to the party. I find it difficult to believe that it's just 1 or 2 people that's causing this. I think the problem goes much deeper than what De Bono is saying. Like, there are some truths to it, but the reality is there are threads of the party that have completely different views of what the party should look like and what it should fight for and what it should stand for. Bernard Gregg's biggest asset is that he's a good compromiser and a good negotiator. He can bring people around the table and come up with they can come up with a common approach. That was his skill as a lawyer, settling claims. The problem with this is that this strategy, the end result of this strategy means that it's all compromise, and the PN doesn't propose many exciting measures. It doesn't take many political risks or any political risks, and ultimately isn't providing a vision that is much different to the Labour Party. And therefore, it's very difficult to excite the electorate, which is something that every opposition should strive to do. Moving on, something quite different, quite a sad story. A Maltese woman, Valerie Chanter, has recounted a heartbreaking story about how her baby had just about managed to meet and be blessed by Pope Francis during his recent visit to Malta and died just a few days later. So Valerie gave an interview to TVAM. He said that her baby Kayan was born with a heart condition. Doctors only gave him a few days to live. However, he managed to live for 5.5 months, just about long enough to meet the Pope and receive his blessing before he passed away. And even though it's obviously a very sad story, and our condolences to the young family, the fact that he did manage to meet the Pope did offer some condolences to the family as well. In fact, in Valerie's words, this meant a lot to me that he died with the Pope's blessing while asleep and at peace. Moving to something a bit quite far from our shores, the crisis in Ukraine is still raging, unfortunately, and European Parliament President Roberta Metsola has been taking a very significant leadership role. So she recently discussed the war with CNN's Wolf Blitzer, one of the most famous journalists in the United States, saying that the European Parliament is working to make sure Europe's children don't look back in a few years' time and say more could have been done to counter the war. She reminded viewers that the war in Ukraine is also Europe's war, and that the worst thing we could do is turn our backs or turn away, and she made it clear that war crimes are being committed in Ukraine. Now, it's clear this isn't going to end anytime soon. The world, or several countries, Western countries, imposed harsh sanctions on Russia to counter the invasion of Ukraine. However, Putin is pressing on. Ukrainians are dying, unfortunately, civilians. We've seen horrific scenes. There was 40 people died outside the train station while trying to escape Ukraine today. However, there's one, I won't say positive, but there's one bright light in all of this, is that it's bringing out Roberta Metzola's leadership skills. She has met the president of Ukraine, she's addressed the Ukrainian parliament, the Rada, and it's hard not to feel proud to be Maltese when you see someone who the Maltese public ultimately elected to the European Parliament take such a strong leadership stance on the global stage. And finally, a tilted billboard at risk of collapsing led to road closures and congestion in Regional Road today. Police spoke to Lovin Malta about this. They said that the road, one of Malta's busiest roads, had been closed as a precaution to ensure drivers are not at risk. CPD officials went on site and they established that there was no risk that the billboard was set to collapse imminently. So crisis averted, but if you experienced heavy traffic while driving along Regional Road today, that's the reason. And that brings us to a close for today's episode. Make sure to follow lovinmalta.com. Have a good weekend and have an evening full of lovin'.